Steve is?
No. The chat is. They're being a little bit of whiners today. So
What are
this
they
episode
whining
is brought to you by PrizePicks.
Sorry I accused Steve.
You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NBA, NFL, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. Takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right.
All right, guys. So
McNuggets sent this to me yesterday. Just so you know, this topic idea was not my idea. McNuggets, I think, is trying to get us all killed.
Yeah.
Here we
Spoke
go.
to him last night. So there was somebody put out odds on Tua's next team, right?
I got the odds right here for you.
Okay, go ahead. Put that up.
We'll box them. Browns are at plus 200. Jets are at plus 300. And Chiefs are at plus 400.
So the weird thing about the Browns, and by the way, he should go to the Chiefs. Go be a backup on the Chiefs for a little while.
That wouldn't be too well.
I still think actually Tua could be a serviceable starter if he ever stayed healthy, but I don't think he will. However, the only way the Browns could end up with Tua next year is A, they made some sort of swap for Deshaun Watson, which would actually, believe it or not, I think be worse for the Browns because Tua, I think, has more left on his contract, I believe. Or if the obviously the Dolphins cut him, they can't trade for Tua unless they were trading Watson in the deal. That being said, do we think there's any chance Tua is on the Browns roster in 2026? Jason.
Better not be. Come on, what are we doing?
Blame Mikey McNuggets on this one.
What are we doing?
He must be bored because he texted me yesterday morning this topic. He's like, you should use this.
Tua? All right. So let's indulge a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the Browns are going to add a quarterback one way or another next year, are they not? Or does anybody? Let me ask you guys this: do we think there's any chance that the Browns' 3 quarterbacks next year will be Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, and Deshaun Watson?
No.
I agree. Do you think there's I bet G thinks there's a chance that it's those 3. Do you?
I think there's a pretty good chance. I would say 60% that
You
those
think
3
there's a 60% chance it's those 3 guys?
Well,
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. If they told me, they kind of already said Watson's going to be on the roster, right?
I don't believe that that's definitely set in stone. I don't believe.
That's the messaging they're putting out.
If Andrew Berry is still the GM, then Deshaun Watson will probably still be here.
Yes.
If the Browns fire Andrew Berry, which they obviously should, and if they fire Kevin Stefanski, which they obviously should, if I were a new GM of this team, I would absolutely demand that they cut Deshaun Watson or I'm not taking the job. There's no way I would accept Watson being on the roster. I think the Browns are way better off just taking the cap hit and moving on.
I totally agree.
If I'm a new coach and GM, even though
totally
the cap
agree.
hit for next year, right? Like to me, I'm moving on. No interest in Deshaun Watson being here.
I view the Browns inside. I view that they don't. I think they've already worked. They don't view him as an issue. Like if he was like kind of a person who was doing a bunch of stuff or doing a bunch of extra, or as a guy that was demanding for him to start, like. He's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Like, it's not like I don't even hear many stories about him. I don't think he view him as a problem.
But what is the point of having him on the roster?
So that they don't have to take a cap hit.
But so what? You got to. What's the difference if you have it all in 1 year or you split it up? Like at this point, the cap's going to be $300 million. The Browns are probably not going to be good next year anyway. Just take the hit and get it over with.
So I always think about it like this.
Yeah.
If they're viewing it, what's the worst? Like if they view him as a person who's not doing anything, he's on the roster. The money ain't that big of a deal. They trying to get it out of there, and we're trying to have the most operating capital.
Yeah.
Why would they feel a necessity?
Because
it was a mistake. It was a mistake.
The owner said it.
And good teams pivot off of mistakes.
That's right.
And the Browns cling to them. If I was the new GM, I'd sweep out.
Look what the Broncos did.
If I was the new GM,
Yeah.
I'd sweep out the entire quarterback room. Start completely over. If you're a
See,
new GM.
I think it's, to me, if I'm going to draft a quarterback in the top 5, and if the Browns are picking top 2, they probably will draft a quarterback. If they do, I would consider keeping Dylan Gabriel as the 3rd quarterback
The only way Dylan's here probably is if Kevin's here, and Kevin's not going to be here. Why would you bring back? Like, what did Dylan show?
Nothing.
So why would you keep
But
him?
you don't need a third quarter. Like he's the third.
I mean,
quarterback.
fine, I guess maybe.
If you draft a quarterback high, you have to cut Watson and you trade Shedeur Sanders.
Well, you don't have to.
If you
but
don't, that's what I'm saying. What I do.
Yeah.
If I decide that I'm not going to go with these quarterbacks, I'm going to give Shedeur another chance or whatever, then I would stick with Shedeur. I'd still cut Watson. I'd bring in a different veteran to back up Shedeur, whatever. But if I'm going to draft a quarterback in the top of the first round, I'm getting rid of all the quarterbacks here. Again, maybe keeping Gabriel's a third, not because I think he's any good, just because this way I don't have to add 2 more quarterbacks.
The way I would look at it is, first of all, like if I'm assuming that Andrew Berry is here, Andrew Berry had a role in all of these guys being here, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if I'm looking at it like this, I'm like, all right, well, I got Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel ain't he's not a starting quarterback or nothing, but is he good enough to be a third quarterback? Sure. Is he good enough for a guy to come in and take some snaps and understand, where to throw the ball? He just has limitations based on his size. We've all known that.
Think he'd want to be here? I don't think he'd want to be here either.
I wouldn't if I was him.
Yeah.
The way he was treated this year, why would he want to be here?
Here's why I would want to be here, because it's a job. If Dylan Gabriel, you got to think about it.
Nobody else might want him.
If nobody else wants him, yeah.
The Browns would have to cut Dylan Gabriel.
Honestly, I think Dylan Gabriel will be a really good offensive coordinator in 6 years, 7 years. I don't mean that. I don't mean that disrespectfully.
No,
yeah.
I don't mean that as a slight. I'm serious. I think he would be a really good offensive coordinator.
He doesn't have the talent to be a quarterback in the NFL.
Like Kellen Moore, some of these other dudes, Jason Garrett. Usually, generally speaking, guys who play quarterback that have limitations could be good minds, right?
Yeah.
My thing is, look, Dylan, here's why I would keep Dylan Gabriel ain't going to give you no problems. He's going to come in and do his job. You used to pick on him a third round. I'm not going to waste a third round pick.
They already did.
What I'm saying, I could get something out of him. I'm not going to just trade him because I just feel he's not. If it's between him and Bailey Zappi and I invested a draft pick in the third round on him, I'm taking Dylan Gabriel. I'm just going by assets, right?
Well, you're assuming Berry's going to keep his job. I just don't understand how that's possible.
It's the Browns. Anything's possible.
If the Browns keep Andrew Berry, I mean, I just what are we doing here?
I'm just telling you about what the reporting said.
He's been here 6 years. The franchise is in way worse shape than it was when he got here.
I'm telling you what the report.
I know, but I'm assuming either he's wrong or Jimmy's going to change his mind.
I don't.
Not everything Ian Rappaport says ends up being correct.
Look, I'm just going by the tea leaves, man. I'm just reading it. He looks like, to me, the last person standing.
That's insane. That's literally insane. How do I trust him on quarterbacks when he took Dylan Gabriel in the third round?
I mean,
they have zero talent, close to zero talent on offense. Zero.
You know where I stand on this.
Yeah.
His name was on the Deshaun trade. He's the GM of the Deshaun trade.
To me, this is a no-brainer. Everybody's got to go. It's 6 years. The franchise is in as bad a shape as it's ever been right now.
Well, you got to look at it like this, man. It's Jimmy Haslam.
Yeah.
Right? I told you this is Game of Thrones. We've been talking about this for 3 whole years. Who has Jimmy's ear? At first, it was D. Podesta. Evidently, he don't got it no more. He's gone. Kevin Stefanski, I believe, had his ear for a long period of time because he had the most dividends. He had the 2 Coach of the Years, right? He looked like he was in charge. He looked like he was doing what he wanted to. He said, I want Dylan Gabriel. We
don't know that he said that.
I mean, all accounts are that was his guy.
Yeah. So we believe Kevin Stefanski overruled Andrew Berry to draft Dylan Gabriel? We're gonna blame Stefanski. We can't just blame Stefanski for all the bad things and give Andrew Berry credit for 3 decent draft picks.
No, I ain't giving him credit for nothing. I just said it was well known that in those buildings he liked Dylan Gabriel. That was his guy. He met with Dylan and he said he was.
I'm blaming everybody. To me, trying to parse who's to blame between the two, I don't want. To me, there's no argument for keeping either of them in my mind.
Well, look here. We can say what we want. The one thing that happens when you talk about it is what have you done for me lately? When you look at the draft choices, obviously Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry were at the hip. We talked about that for a long period of time, and then between this year. Along the line, when they traded Joe Flacco, And when they moved him, I said, "Oh no, they're not on the same page because Kevin Stefanski would have never moved Joe Flacco ever."
So you think Barry should keep his job?
I already told you, I wouldn't have a problem if all of them was gone. I wouldn't have no problem with it. But I can see where the owner says, "Okay, I'm going to keep Andrew Berry because of X, Y, and Z."
What are the X, Y, and Z?
The X, Y, and Z are the guys he drafted this year.
I know, but the only
So then how come Kevin doesn't get credit for drafting those guys if they're attached?
Well, here's the thing. If he's talking about the difference between the players and what's going on, the problem with Kevin Stefanski is Kevin Stefanski was in charge of the offense. The offense is not good
because there's no talent.
That's
the excuse for Shedeur, but it's not a good excuse for Kevin. It works for Shedeur, but not for Kevin. These are the rules of the game.
Well, here's the thing. They wasn't just not good with Shedeur. They was not good last year.
That's true. So that's the talent.
Andrew Berry's name was on the trade of the worst trade in NFL history, and they're going to fire the fireman who couldn't put out the flames.
It's the second worst trade in history, but
it's the worst.
But
they're letting the arsonist walk, and they're firing the guy who couldn't put out the flames. The whole reason the franchise and the offense is in the position they're in is because of the Deshaun trade. There's no debate.
Do you agree that when they all said that about the Deshaun Watson trade, do you agree that each and every one of them said everybody was in lockstep with that decision? They were on record saying
I'm sure they were.
That's the position they're taking, so that's the position we're going to hold them to.
Yeah, right.
But somebody had to bring it to them first. Somebody had to come up with the idea. Who came up with the idea?
Yeah.
I can only go by what they told me. When Podesta was in Colorado and they said who picked him, was that you? He said it was an organizational decision.
Okay, so then everybody takes the blame
so
for it.
everybody got to take somebody got to take some blame for it.
Andrew Berry, to me, doesn't keep his job because of Carson Schlesinger and Harold Fannin. All right, we've made a big deal about this draft. He drafted Mason Graham in the top 5. How good is Mason Graham?
Serviceable. He's good.
You better get more than serviceable for a top 5.
You drafted him top 5. You better be a Pro Bowler minimum.
If you get
especially at that
he's
position.
Nowhere close to that right now.
Listen, you're not gonna get me to say that Andrew Berry's classes prior to this one have been great. I've been telling you about.
I'm not even ready to say this one's great yet.
Well, listen, if you got Harold Fannin who broke the rookie record and receiving record as a tight end, that's pretty good.
The Browns record.
He's a Pro Bowl alternate. He's a rookie.
Yeah, Fannin and Schlesinger are great picks.
I mean, Schlesinger's
I still like Judkins. I think
I still like Judkins too, but like. You got a linebacker, a running back, and a tight end. What else you got?
That stands for something, right? I'm just giving you what. Listen, I'm telling you.
We don't have a single offensive lineman. Is that true?
Of course you don't.
We don't know if we have a quarterback.
You missed on Jed Wills.
Yeah. I mean, what?
Can I ask a question here?
If you look at his track record, good versus bad, there's way more bad than good. We wasted a second-round pick on Mike Hall. We wasted a second-round pick on Elijah Moore.
Yep.
They traded a second-round pick for Elijah Moore and a third-round pick.
Yep.
So you dropped 30 spots in the draft to get Elijah Moore, a useless NFL player.
Hey, go
Mike Hall, no good.
Go there. You're not going. Listen.
So I can't.
His track record for drafting receivers and linemen is always on display.
And by the way,
guess what? I was talking about this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm not sitting up here pounding the concrete for his track record.
I don't think,
I'm just saying what the ownership is looking at.
Real quick. Moving forward, it boils down to: do you trust him with whatever picks we get?
Zero.
Next
No.
year,
not
the
at
year
all.
after that,
No.
or move on.
No.
So,
Do you?
Is there any reason to keep him if you don't trust him?
I think when you look at this draft, it's going to be pivotal. Because if they do keep him, like I said yesterday, if they do keep him, whatever they draft, this next year is going to be the referendum on what he is. Next year, he's gonna have to have another hit, and on top of that, he's gonna have to have a massive jump in wins.
Which is gonna be hard when you're not sure you have a quarterback, you have no offensive line, you have no wide receiver.
That's part of the game, though.
Yeah. Well,
and now here we go. If they take a quarterback.
Yeah.
And then you fire the GM, and now round and round we go.
Right, and then that
There
new
you
GM,
go.
he didn't really like that quarterback.
That wasn't my guy, and that's how you wind up.
There we go.
Which is why I said weeks ago, if you're on the fence, get rid of him now.
What's happened here? I think everybody rationally knows that Barry, to me, and I know you've been a Stefanski supporter, but you understand that he needs to be fired. I think at this point,
I think everybody needs to separate.
But I think what's happening here is the Shedorians have convinced themselves that Andrew Berry is a Shedorian too, with no facts to back that up, in my opinion. Like that somehow Andrew Berry liked Shedeur when nobody else in the organization did. I don't buy that for a minute.
No, I think what people are pointing at is when you look at Andrew Berry. So if you look at Shedeur Sanders was fourth on the depth chart, right?
Yeah.
The general manager traded Kenny Pickett, who was getting all the first team reps. Okay.
Well, he was hurt.
But I'm just saying. But what I'm saying though is,
the general manager also signed Kenny Pickett.
But I know. But what I'm saying though is, why would you trade the dude he was the guy that was getting most reps, and he only had a hamstring injury? It wasn't like he tore his knee up. He got a 5th round pick for him. So we like, okay, why did you trade him? Yeah. Okay, he left. Dylan Gabriel was then a backup. Then Joe Flacco was the guy. After 4 games, you decided that Joe Flacco was like done.
Well, they benched him.
So they benched him after 4 games, and we talked about how the offense was. So they got rid of Flacco.
Right.
So we're like, okay, they brought Dylan Gabriel in, right?
Right.
Dylan Gabriel was supposed to be the starter. Kevin Stefanski came out and said if he passes concussion protocol, he was going to be the starter. Right. He didn't pass concussion protocol, right? So they started Shedeur.
Yeah.
So if the general manager has moved all of these people, he's moved the 2 quarterbacks prior to him. Yeah. Dylan Gabriel, the coach said he was going to be the starter if he passed concussion protocol. Obviously, that's his guy. And all of a sudden, Shedeur comes in and plays, and then they make the decision he's the quarterback for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Why
does that mean that the GM liked him anymore? I don't see any facts that back that up.
Because Kevin Stefanski did not know that they were trading Joe Flacco.
Well, how do we know that?
It was in a press conference. They talked about it. He said, "Did you know, Joe? Did you know what was going on with that?"
He said he trusts Berry with that decision.
Okay. So that doesn't mean he was against it.
So do you believe
that's the GM's job?
But do you believe
they had benched him anyway? G.
Do you believe? That Kevin Stefanski would have wanted Joe Flacco to be traded from the get-go?
Probably not. If you're a coach, you'd rather have
the veteran,
a veteran backup.
Yes,
but that doesn't mean that Andrew Berry liked Shedeur Sanders anymore. Because he wasn't going to play. If he loved him that much, he could, and he had all this power. Why didn't he force Kevin Stefanski to play him?
I mean, they slightly did.
But let me ask you this: if Andrew Berry does stay at GM and he drafts a quarterback in the 1st round, then all this narrative about Berry liking him is out the window. It's gone. It was all baloney.
But I don't. Nobody get no credit points for the narrative about Berry liking Shedeur Sanders. That don't move nothing, because at the end of the day, it's just about the evaluation of whether or not they're going to play Shedeur Sanders or go in another direction. You don't get extra credit points for the Browns as an organization. They drafted all of them: Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson. There's no separation. Nobody gets extra credit points. They all drafted a quarterback. It's up to them to decide what they're going to do with it. I don't understand why that's
I just think Andrew Berry's the GM. If you look at his track record of what they've done in terms of adding and subtracting players, the negative outweighs the positive by as much as it can. There's 10 bad moves he's made for every 1 good move he made.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I could say the same thing about the coach. I don't care that he won Coach of the Year a few years ago. He's won 6 games the last 2 years. His clock management is terrible. The offense has played better when he's not been the play caller. His in-game management is terrible. To me, it's a complete joke to keep either of them at this point. And that doesn't mean that somewhere along the line, Andrew Berry couldn't do a good job as GM somewhere else, or Kevin Stefanski couldn't do a good job as head coach somewhere else. People learn, people grow. I'm not saying they will be. I'm not convinced either one will be great at their job somewhere else. But maybe they will be. But I don't care. To me, if you're the Browns, there is zero argument for keeping either of these guys. And to make it, this draft was so great. Let's slow our roll a little bit. We got 2 guys that are definitely excellent in Schlesinger and Fannin. I think we all like Judkins and think he's going to be good. But he wasn't great this year. And the 1st-round pick is a nice player, but we don't know how good he is. And if he's not a star, that was a terrible pick.
Hey, I'm just telling you what the tea leaves look like to me. It looks like Andrew Berry will be the last man standing.
We'll see. I guess we'll find out.